Some stories never truly end. Even after the headlines disappear, even after years have passed, certain deaths continue to raise questions that refuse to fade away. In the world of fame, where every movement of a celebrity is followed by millions, it may seem impossible for mysteries to exist. Yet history shows us that even the most famous people on Earth can leave behind unanswered questions. Some deaths were ruled accidents. Some were called natural causes. Others were declared closed cases. But for many fans, investigators, and journalists, the feeling has always remained the same. Something doesn't fully make sense. Tonight, we are looking at celebrity deaths that still raise questions, stories that continue to be discussed, debated, and remembered years later. Not because of rumors or wild theories, but because the circumstances surrounding these tragedies left the world searching for answers. Marilyn Monroe, a death surrounded by questions. The death of Marilyn Monroe remains one of the most discussed mysteries in Hollywood history. In August 1962, Monroe was found dead in her home at the age of just 36. The official cause of death was ruled a probable suicide due to a barbiturate overdose. Yet almost immediately, questions began to appear. There were conflicting timelines about who discovered her and when. Reports about phone calls and visitors created confusion. Some people close to her later described her mood as more hopeful than despairing, which made the tragedy even harder to understand. Monroe was one of the most famous women in the world, and her connections to powerful and influential people only added to the speculation that followed her death. Decades later, historians and writers continue to revisit the case, examining evidence, interviews, and documents. While many accept the official explanation, others believe there are still unanswered questions. What is certain is that the world lost one of its most iconic stars far too soon, and her final hours remain a subject of fascination even today. Bruce Lee, a sudden and shocking loss. When Bruce Lee died in 1973, the world was stunned. Lee was only 32 years old and at the peak of his fame. He was healthy, athletic, and considered one of the strongest and most disciplined figures in the entertainment industry. The official cause of death was cerebral edema, a swelling of the brain, reportedly linked to a reaction to medication. Yet for many fans, the explanation seemed incomplete. Lee's sudden collapse, the speed of events, and the lack of clear warning signs made the tragedy difficult to understand. Over the years, countless theories emerged, ranging from medical explanations to speculation that has never been proven. What made his death particularly shocking was the contrast between his physical condition and the suddenness of his passing. Even today, Bruce Lee remains a global icon, and the mystery surrounding his final hours continues to be discussed by fans around the world. Princess Diana, a night that changed the world. In 1997, the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, shocked the entire world. The official investigation concluded that the car crash in Paris was caused by a combination of factors, including a high-speed chase and the driver's condition. Yet, for many people, questions lingered for years. Why were paparazzi following so aggressively? Could the tragedy have been prevented? Were all the circumstances fully understood? Investigations were carried out in both France and the United Kingdom, and many findings were made public. Still, public debate continued, fueled by the enormous emotional impact of Diana's death. What made the tragedy so powerful was not only the mystery surrounding the crash, but the deep connection millions of people felt with her. She was seen as compassionate, human, and relatable despite her royal status. Her passing remains one of the most widely mourned losses in modern history, and the events of that night are still remembered in detail decades later. Kurt Cobain, questions that never fully disappeared. The death of Kurt Cobain in 1994 marked the end of one of the most influential musicians of his generation. His death was officially ruled a suicide, and evidence supported that conclusion. However, the case has continued to be debated for years, with fans and independent investigators revisiting details of the timeline, witness statements, and reports. Cobain had struggled with fame, pressure, and personal challenges, which made the tragedy deeply emotional for fans who connected with his music. What keeps the discussion alive is not only the circumstances of his death, but the powerful cultural impact he had. Many people still wonder what music he might have created if he had lived longer. His story remains one of the most discussed and analyzed in music history, showing how the death of an artist can leave both emotional and unanswered questions behind. Natalie Wood, A Mysterious Night at Sea. In 1981, actress Natalie Wood drowned near Catalina Island under circumstances that investigators would later describe as unusual. At the time, her death was ruled accidental. However, years later, the case was reopened, and the cause of death was amended to reflect uncertainty about exactly what had happened. Witness statements, timeline gaps, and unanswered questions about the events on the boat that night kept the case in the public eye. The fact that one of Hollywood's most recognizable stars could vanish under such mysterious circumstances captured public attention and never fully left it. Even decades later, documentaries and articles continue to revisit the events of that night, showing how some mysteries never truly fade. Heath Ledger, a tragedy that shocked Hollywood. When Heath Ledger died in 2008, the news stunned both fans and the film industry. Ledger was in the middle of a career peak and had just completed a performance that would later be considered one of the greatest in film history. His death was ruled an accidental overdose involving prescription medications. Yet the suddenness of the tragedy raised questions about the pressures faced by actors working intense schedules and dealing with demanding roles. Friends and colleagues described him as dedicated, thoughtful, and deeply focused on his craft. The tragedy sparked conversations about mental health, exhaustion, and the unseen pressures of fame, conversations that continue in the entertainment industry today. Michael Jackson, the death of a global icon. In 2009, the sudden death of Michael Jackson shocked millions of people around the world. Jackson had been preparing for a major concert comeback, and anticipation among fans was enormous. His death was ruled a homicide caused by acute propofol intoxication administered by his personal physician, leading to one of the most widely covered trials in modern history. Despite the legal conclusions, questions remained in the minds of many fans about how such a situation could have developed and whether warning signs had been missed. Jackson's death was not only a tragedy, but also a turning point in how the world discussed celebrity health, pressure, and responsibility. Tupac Shakur, a murder that was never forgotten. The death of Tupac Shakur remains one of the most talked about mysteries in music history. In September 1996, Tupac was shot in Las Vegas while sitting in a car after attending a boxing match. He died 6 days later at just 25 years old. The attack happened in public on a busy street, yet for decades no one was convicted for the crime. That alone fueled endless questions. How could such a high-profile shooting go unsolved for so long? Were there deeper conflicts behind the scenes? Tupac was not just a rapper. He was a cultural voice who spoke openly about power, politics, and injustice. His influence was enormous, and his sudden death left a massive void in the music world. Even today, his murder continues to be discussed, investigated, and debated, proving that some celebrity deaths never truly leave the public's mind. What makes these stories so powerful is not only the fame of the people involved, but the feeling that something was left unfinished. When a public figure dies suddenly, the world looks for explanations, for meaning, for closure. But sometimes, complete closure never comes. Questions remain, memories remain, and the stories continue to be told. Perhaps that is why these mysteries still capture our attention today. Not because we expect all the answers, but because we remember the lives, the talent, and the moments these individuals gave to the world. And sometimes, the unanswered questions become part of their legacy.